After Batman and Spider-Man, which superhero has the third best rogues gallery? Obviously, the Caped Crusader and the Webbing Wallcrawler unquestionably have the top two spots when it comes to their roster of villains. Any random person on the street could probably name 3 to 5 of their iconic foes, even if they didn't know that they belonged with that specific character at first. Literally, the only argument that you could have is which one is first and which is second. However, after that, it's not quite as clear-cut who would come in third, because the same man-on-the-street question becomes a lot harder for, say, Wonder Woman. If you ask for a top 5 Wonder Woman villains, most people would be able to say Cheetah, or probably even Ares if they saw the movie, but if you get down to Cersei, then you've already found someone who knows more than 80% of the population and probably is, or at least knows, a giant comic book nerd somewhere in their life. Wonder Woman is great, but that's in spite of her lackluster villain stable, at least as far as the vast public is concerned. You might think that the Flash would be better off, but I'm not so sure. Despite his villains literally being named the Rogues, the general population is only tacitly aware of some of his most prominent foes, like Captain Cold and Gorilla Grodd, largely due to the CW show. But I'm still not sure that they would be able to correctly identify Weather Wizard, Mirror Master, or the Trickster, even though they were all on the show too. I will give you Reverse Flash as one that more people would probably know, and while he is doing better than any of the Wonder Woman villains, I still don't think that you would be able to say that he's anywhere near the level of Joker, Green Goblin, Penguin, Doc Ock, and all the rest. When you go over to Green Lantern, he just has to hope that people know enough of the other Lantern Corps to name off Sinestro, Star Sapphire, and Atrocitus, and he would be really lucky just to get 2 of those 3. Honestly, I think people could name more actual Green Lanterns than their villains. You're more likely to get a Kyle Rayner than the Manhunters any day. And obviously, as you go down the list of overall popularity in DC, the chances get even worse that people would know anything about the character at all. Like, Aquaman is easily a top 10 DC property, but after Black Manta, the only reason a man on the street would know about Ocean Master is likely because of the film, at which point that means the next one they would probably say is Dolph Lundgren. So then maybe we should go with the most recognizable superhero of all time. Surely Superman is able to come in third as the oldest superhero around. Well, anyone could name you Lex Luthor, that's for sure. Probably General Zod too, he's been in enough high-profile projects, and maybe Bizarro as well. Even if they don't exactly know what he's called, they will be able to recognize the vaguely zombie version of Superman. But you have to think, could the Everyman really go much beyond that? There is a possibility that they could go for Doomsday, because a fair amount of people know that Superman was killed by him, and possibly even Brainiac, especially since he's had a bit of a resurgence in recent years. So there is a top 5 that could be placed. That's much better than some of the other options, definitely an improvement, but where Spidey and Bats could have close to a dozen enemies rattled off in quick succession, you're pretty much scraping the bottom of the barrel once you hit Metallo, Toyman, and Parasite, at least as far as most casual consumers would know. And that's barely cracking into the B-tier Superman villains already. I guess there could be a few more from someone who watched a smattering of episodes of the animated series in their youth, or maybe if they realized that the Supergirl show stole a lot of Superman tropes outright, you could get a Livewire thrown in there or something. I guess you could maybe classify Darkseid as a Superman villain. I would be willing to give you that one, but I still don't know if most people could look at these villains in isolation and immediately identify them with Superman in the same way that you could see Poison Ivy or Venom in a vacuum and know what hero they go with. So Superman puts up a good fight, but honestly he would be lucky to crack the top 5. So then maybe you think it might be time to switch over to Marvel, but honestly it kind of gets worse over there. Like, take Iron Man. He's got the Mandarin, Ironmonger, Crimson Dynamo, Commander Cobalt, Hydrogen Man, and Professor Dementor. And now there's a good portion of people that have no idea that I just made up 2 of those and stole one of them from Kim Possible. The point being that Iron Man doesn't have solo villains well known enough for the layperson without in-depth comic knowledge to be able to even recognize when someone's getting close. His second movie ever starred Whiplash as the main antagonist, and nobody even cared to notice that he was using the Crimson Dynamo's backstory instead, which already means that the bench was not very deep. As for Thor, I'm not even sure that he counts for this exercise because all of his bad guys were pretty much made up hundreds of years ago by the actual Norse Vikings, so anything attributed to him should really go to Scandinavia. Then there's Captain America, who is one of the greatest heroes ever made, but not because he has great villains to bounce off of. He's got Red Skull, Baron Zemo, and Baron Strucker, who are all just a little bit too samey, as mostly just a guy that holds a grudge that's like 100 years old at this point. There is at least Arnim Zola, who's different in body shape if nothing else, so that's nice. Maybe you could also count the Winter Soldier, he's pretty cool. But the problem is that they went pretty exclusively for dark mirrors of the hero, which in Steve's case apparently caps out at kind of enhanced peak human dude. Which is more than a bit insulting for Cap because he's able to handle way more than that. Although the dark mirror concept isn't even at its worst here because Hulk runs it into the ground. He's got Abomination, Red Hulk, the Leader, Absorbing Man, Zax, and no, I didn't even make any of those up that time. They're all Gamma monsters like him. The only interesting one is the Leader because it inverted what usually happens with gamma exposure, but could your neighbor even name that many of them? Or could they even properly connect them to the Hulk because they saw Brave New World, and now they're confused and think they're Captain America foes? I guess there are the U foes maybe, but they pretty much always stink. But that's a good point too. Maybe we should be looking at teams, because you wouldn't really say, Dr. Doom is a Human Torch villain, he's a Fantastic Four villain as a unit. So it makes sense to me that some heroes can be lumped together. Although probably not the Fantastic Four specifically, because besides Galactus and the Silver Surfer, Marvel's first family doesn't have a lot of heavy hitters. For every Super Skrull, there's a Mole Man, so really no man on the street could come up with a worthwhile top 5 for them to save their life. Although you could maybe have an argument for the Teen Titans. Deathstroke didn't start as a foil for the Titans, but that's arguably his most impactful role. Not to mention Trigon as another landmark foe to put them on the map, with some requisite lesser offerings such as Dr. Light or Brother Blood. Definitely a step up from the Fantastic Four, but sadly Robin's team is just not on par with his partner in crime fighting's solo roster. And of course, when I say teams, I don't mean the Justice League or the Avengers, because that would be cheating to just pool everyone's villains together, or to try and classify Thanos as a Hawkeye villain. Just because they fought at some point doesn't mean you get to claim them. But I do think there's a team out there that could rise above the rest to claim that bronze medal with the X-Men. This is one of the most important teams in all of comic books, and that importance has spilled over into other media as well, with multiple successful TV shows and their movies being the cornerstone that all of modern superhero cinema was built on with Spider-Man 1, and arguably Blade to a lesser extent. So this has led generations of people to get familiar with the X-Men villains. Also, it really helps when your arch nemesis is the greatest comic book villain of all time, with Magneto having the most believable motivations ever for any antagonist, having been the victim of attempted extermination before and vowing to never let it happen again. Also, it doesn't hurt that he has consistently had phenomenal actors portray him. But in addition to Magneto, the X-Men have plenty of other well-known foes, such as Mystique, who has also had multiple high-profile actresses play her, while being likely the most famous shapeshifter in all of comics, and probably in the top 10 across all of media. The movie wardrobe, or lack thereof, really made her stand out in the minds of many. And those are just the headliners of the X-Men's main thorn in the side of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. While maybe not the most impressive or imposing individual villains, you would be hard-pressed to find somebody that was ignorant of any other mutants in their ranks, like Toad, Quicksilver, the Blob, Pyro, or even Sabretooth for a time, especially if they've seen a single movie or episode of one of the many X-Men shows over the years. But maybe you would say that Sabretooth shouldn't count because he's more of a Wolverine solo villain. Fine, I'll give you that one, we don't even need him. There's still Juggernaut, whose helmet is instantly iconic, and as a staple of any good rogues gallery, there's also the Sentinels that the X-Men can mow down in massive numbers, because any hero needs a good faceless army that they can use to unleash maximum carnage. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that the public at large is going to recognize Sauron, Mojo, the Brood, the Shadow King, or sadly, even Mr. Sinister despite him being a major villain. He's only ever been frustratingly teased on the big screen. However, the X-Men do have a big bad of their own, who is just as big of a threat as Thanos or Darkseid with Apocalypse. He's one of the strongest characters in Marvel, and always a constant looming threat. Don't worry that his movie wasn't that good, people at least know that the X-Men are tied to this blue god of death. If for no other reason than he turned one of the founding members with Archangel, especially if they enjoy any of the animated fare. However, I would argue that last point is likely the most important, with switching sides seeming to happen more to the X-Men than any other heroes. But that does leave some characters like Emma Frost to technically be counted as a major villain, even if she is more known for being an ally these days. But hey, if other heroes were more persuasive like the X-Men, maybe they could have more of their enemies sign up to fight with them. I mean, even world-famous Deadpool started out as an antagonist for the X-Men. However, one of the biggest plot points in all of comics was the Dark Phoenix. Having one of your longtime teammates become a cosmic being of destruction was a bold choice, and it left the Dark Phoenix as one of the most consequential villains the X-Men ever had, and one that would be instantly recognizable to anyone that had seen most versions of the team before, making you wonder how Jean fell to the dark side and if they could even stop her. Maybe you think that I've stretched the premise by using a team for this exercise, but the X-Men were easily Marvel's number 2 property, only below Spider-Man for decades. So why should they not be just below him and Batman as the third best rogues gallery in the superhero genre? But what do you think? Should Spawn somehow have gotten the bronze medal instead? It really makes you wonder why some heroes get all of the luck while others are just scrambling to get by, making you feel pretty bad when you know that Moon Knight would kill to even have a Man-Bat or a Shocker to go against once in a while.